Alright, this will be one of the longest modules of the course, so if you feel the need for a break, feel free to take one in the middle of this section. Here, our focus will be a thorough review of schedules, a powerful and versatile feature within ArchiCAD. On one hand, it allows you to quantify any element present in your BIM model automatically and almost instantly. And on the other hand, it enables you to create documentation such as tables or schedules for virtually any element. We will also explore various examples of managing schedules by elements, components, and surfaces. Finally, we'll put everything into practice by creating specific quantification for some of the elements and schedules for doors, windows, furniture present in the pilot project. Remember that the lessons are structured, allowing you to pause or replay the video to review each concept at your own pace. Additionally, keep in mind all the additional materials provided throughout the lessons. Having said this, let's get started. Alright, so this section is going to be about the use of the schedules function. This is quite an amazing function and one of the most powerful ones that ArchiCAD has to offer, because it will allow you to pretty much quantify anything as long as it's been modeled or as long as you got the parameters registered within the model. Well, you can combine a little bit the quantification with some type of visualization. This is something we usually do in Revit one by one. We need to position each of the symbology click by click. But the amazing thing in ArchiCAD is that you can solve this completely instantly and automatically by simply adding the parameter of elevation view, 2D view. For example, you even can display your objects in 3D, such as with the furniture schedule, which is quite an amazing thing. And you can also format this however you want. Imagine it's an integrated Excel within ArchiCAD, but it's even better because you can combine all the data. You can simply extract it automatically from your model and combine them with 2D visualization. So the schedules function will allow you to pretty much quantify anything within your model, within your project, and it's also quite a powerful tool in order to create any type of catalog with the use of the different visualization functions. And the best part is that you can export this schedule to Excel, share it with whoever you want. You can use the schedules internally. There are many different functions that we are going to cover for the schedules within ArchiCAD. So for this case, what I'm going to ask you is to open up the saved progress where you have the documentation, where you have your different models. And in the next lesson, we are going to start off talking a little bit about the general overview about the schedules function. Alright, so first things first, how does the schedule function works within ArchiCAD? I'm just going to open up the model I got over here. And if you notice in ArchiCAD, if you go over here to the project map, you got the ground floor, you got sections, all the different views, but you also have one extra group over here, which is going to be the schedule. Well, in my case, it's in Spanish, but pretty much you can, once you have your 3D model, you can start extracting the different data directly from the geometry of the model, such as would be the width, such as would be the length, the volumetry. You can even combine it with the visualization of some of the elements you got within your project, such as, for example, doors and windows. The schedules is quite easy because everything is parametric. You simply right-click it, you can create a new schedule. Well, we are going to get to this in a little bit. And once you create your new schedule, you will define which elements you will select and which data you are going to extract from the selected elements. And when we are talking about all the data that you can extract, the list is just insane. You can pretty much extract or combine the data with other types of functions to pretty much quantify anything. You got general parameters, you got specific parameters, you got over 100 parameters that you can explore. It's something we're going to comment also in a little bit. But the best thing over here, and as per usual, if we go back to the 3D model, the finished model, and let's say for some reason this door is going to change. Let's take the door. Let's, for example, take maybe assign another type of door leaf. Maybe it's going to be for the 38 style. Let's press OK. Let's go back to the schedules for the doors. You will notice that now the visualization is completely automatically generated. And this is quite amazing because it's going to save you just so much time from drawing everything line by line if you are using AutoCAD, or maybe if you are using Revit, from clicking one by one. ArchiCAD does it all for you. And the best part is that you can also, for example, open up the generated view, and you can start annotating as much as you want the generated view. You can, for example, insert your labels. Well, it's going to be independent. You can start specifying the materials, the details. You can draw it however you want. But first things first, let's go back to our model. I'm going to ask you, go over here to the project map. And there are different ways on how you can start creating your schedules. The first way would be to find the schedule list or the schedule group over here. You'll notice that we have 3 different types of schedules, something we are going to comment in a little bit. But you can simply right-click the group, and over here you will find the new schedule button. This is the best way for me. This is the most direct way, and the one that I personally recommend you go with. The second way would be to select the schedules. You can hit the settings button over here to open the window where you are also going to create your schedules. And the third way, if you go to the menu bar, you can find over here in document, you can jump into schedules over here, and you can go over here to scheme settings. This is the third way on how you can activate this window. And once you activate the window, you got, well, as per usual, as we are already covered for the layer combinations, the model view options, in the left part, which is also always going to be divided, you can visualize a list of the different types of schedules that ArchiCAD already has within the template. So most of them are already pre-configured, but this is something we're going to delete, and we are going to create our own schedules in a second. You can create new schedules with this button over here. You can delete the schedules here. You can also, for example, export and import the schedules to external types of files, or share them with your colleagues. There are many different options you got over here. Then, in short words, the criteria is where you are going to specify the selection for your schedule. And lastly but not least, the fields is the data that you are going to extract from the selection. Okay, so to put in short words, this is how the schedules work. As always, take just a minute to check this out. And in the next lesson, we're going to start commenting more differences and more options for the schedules. Now, one of the basic questions I get in schedules is, okay, what's the meaning of elements, components, and surface, and why do schedules divide into 3 different parts, okay? So if you open up your brochure, you will notice that the examples that I provide you that are documented will come in 3 different categories. You got the element schedule, which is specified by this title. Then you got a component schedule. Then you got a surface schedule. From my own experience, if you notice, almost everything is an element schedule. Element schedule will pretty much select the element you got within ArchiCAD and will extract all the available data. This is a schedule that we are going to use 99% of the times, because it's quite versatile. You can use it for pretty much anything. You can quantify anything. You can create your visualization. You can create your door tables or door schedules. So the most used from my experience is the elements type of schedule. Then you also got the component schedule. And this one is a little bit more specific, because if I open up the model I got over here, if you remember, we worked the constructive model with the use of the composites and the use of the complex profiles. So pretty much the component schedule, what's going to do is it's going to break down the different skins you got in your composites, and it's going to treat them separately. You can extract surface area, you can extract the volume, you can extract all the specific data for each of the specific skins. So you might as well use the component schedule if you have these types of components which have different types of parts integrated within just one element, and you use a component schedule to break down these different parts and treat them separately. And finally, but not least, you also got the surface type of schedule. This one, as the name implies, it's going to give you an extra precision once you start quantifying your surface. Now keep in mind that ArchiCAD will sometimes, for example, if I maybe model a wall over here, and I will model another type of wall over here. So I'm just going to maybe intersect these two walls. And if you notice over here in one of the walls, which is this one over here, I'm just going to select it. You'll notice that some surface is being hidden with the wall we got on the front, and the other type of surface is being exposed. So as the name implies, the surface schedule will allow you to more precisely quantify the surface exterior for each of your elements, considering also the possibility to quantify the exposed material, to quantify if you got some type of opening, it's going to take it into consideration. If you got some type of hidden surface, it's also going to take it into consideration. So pretty much that's how each of these three schedules is going to work. Each one has its own specific use, but from my own experience, the one you are going to most of the times go with is the elements type of schedule. Alright, so let's make just a basic example. Let's say we want to quantify, you can say whichever element you can quantify, go ahead with it. For this case, for the example, let's say I want to quantify how many columns I got within my project, okay? And then we can specify it a little bit better, how many pilasters or columns I got within the project. What you have to do is go over here to schedules, let's right click it, new schedule. And for this case, since I want to quantify something basic, such as the quantity of columns or the amount of columns, when you are creating your new schedule, the first thing you definitely want to do is hit the new button, and then you specify the ID. We can say, or quantities number 1, you can input whichever ID you want to use, amount of columns, something as this, or quantification of columns, quantities of columns, however you want to call it. You can create, you can specify whether it's going to be a new scheme, if you are going to duplicate. If you are going to duplicate, it's quite useful in order to recycle the format that you already have specified. But in this case, we're going to create a new one, and then you specify which type of schedule it's going to be. Since the column is an element, I'm just going to leave it as by elements, okay? Let's press OK. With this, we have created a new schedule. And now the first thing you need to specify is going to be, of course, the criteria. And this is something quite similar, that's something we already reviewed when we checked out the graphic overrides function. You can specify which type of criteria you want to use. You got a basic criteria by default, which is going to be the element type. This is where you can specify if your element type is going to be, and you select the element. For this case, we want to quantify all the columns. But don't forget that you can always press the Add Criteria button over here, and you can add criteria in general by model view, by construction, by position, if the column is going to be offset by an amount, if the column has a specific type of height, if the column has a specific type of width or bottom surface area. There are many parameters and many criteria that you can combine to specify as much as possible your selection. But for this basic case, I'm just going to leave it as a column, okay? Now, which data you want to extract from the column? How about we start off by going over here to the fields. This is where you are going to specify the data. And right over here, you can click the Add Fields button. You can always, for example, click the small icon over here to specify where you want to extract the data, whether it's going to be in general, the parameters and properties available in the tool, or whether it's going to be some type of library part parameter, which is a little bit more specific, or even so IFC properties, which is even more, a little bit more advanced. But for this case, let's simply hit the Add Fields button, or make sure that it's going to be a set for the parameters and properties. And once you hit this, you can start specifying which data you want to extract. Now, if you remember all the columns, something we already did when we documented the structural and the masonry plan, we specified some type of ID. So what we can do is, for each of the columns or each of the elements, we can extract its own ID. Let's select the field over here, and you can simply click the add button over here. And as you can notice, the field is going to be inserted. Now, besides the element ID, what we want to do is extract the amount of columns we got in total or in general for the project. So what you can do is right over here, search for the amount, search for the specific parameter you want to use. Let's see, we got something as quantity. Well, actually, that's it. You can simply, if you want to search it manually, check out all the parameters available. Go ahead and simply scroll down. And for example, keep in mind that once you select your element, you're also going to get this specific group. If in your selection you specify it's going to be a wall, you're going to get the wall parameters. If you specify it's going to be a slab, you're going to get slab parameters. Since we specified it's a column, you can, for example, open up the column section over here and visualize how many parameters you can extract from this column, such as would be the cross section, the start angle, height, diameter, width, surface, and the list simply goes on and on. Okay, but as always, I think it's much easier, it's much more practical for me. What you can do is simply type in the parameter you want to search for, and ArchiCAD is going to instantly give you the parameter. And also, you don't need to really hit the add button over here. You can even double click or double left click the parameter to add it much quicker. So for now, we got element ID, we got quantity. How about we also extract maybe the volume? Let's see if ArchiCAD is going to okay, something we already commented, you got two specific volumes, one of which is gross and one of which is net. And just a simple reminder, something we also covered in the previous lesson. If you got your wall over here, I'm just going to trace the human scale, and the wall has inside has different columns. Well, the net area that ArchiCAD is going to quantify is the leftover part that happens once ArchiCAD takes into consideration the material priorities or the intersection you have within your elements. So pretty much the net area is going to be what I'm marking in green. And then you got a gross area, which is going to be as for example, the columns didn't exist, and as for example, ArchiCAD didn't take into consideration the material priorities. So it's going to pretty much quantify the wall as it would be a complete element. So this one is going to be actually the gross parameter. So for this case, since we want to quantify after ArchiCAD considers the subtraction and all that stuff, we want to get the net volume. So let's simply select it, double click it, and with this we have added the volume for each of the elements. You can, for example, go on, you can add a height type of parameter. You can add, for example, search for something as, let's see, we got some type of width. Yeah, you can also add the width parameter, and you can add and combine as many parameters as you want. So once you are done, you can also specify the order in which ArchiCAD is going to display your parameters. You can take this small arrow over here and then start messing around with the order you got for your parameters. Besides that, you got different combinations over here, but this is something I want to comment in just in the upcoming lesson. For now, just make sure to focus on adding the data you want to display on your schedule. For this case, I'm going to order in first place the element ID, then the quantity, then we got the width by the height, and finally we got the volume. So once you are done, what you can do is simply hit the OK button over here, and then you can go to the project map, search for schedules, open up the elements type of schedule, and right over here you will notice that you have your newly created schedule. Simply double click it, and as you can see, ArchiCAD will extract all the data available from your different modeled columns. So as always, take as much time as you need. Make sure to first off create your schedule. Make sure to take some time to check out the different criteria, the different fields we got within ArchiCAD. And in the next lesson, we're going to continue by talking a little bit about these settings over here and talking a little bit about how you can specify and combine even more criteria. Alright, as an extra, let's simply comment how you can start combining even more criteria. Let's say we select all the columns, but which have some specific type of ID. Because if you remember, once we quantified this, we got element ID, MP1, and C1. So this one is a masonry pilaster, these are the columns. But let's say we want to extract or select only everything that says MP1. So how can you do so? And there are just way too many different ways on how you can do so. You can add a criteria, for example, by element ID, select your criteria, and then indicate ArchiCAD whether the field that you input over here is simply something that it contains or maybe even does not contain as a negative. So it's going to actually exclude everything that has maybe MP1, or maybe if it strictly starts with or ends with. Or even so, if it's some type of number, let's say maybe 5, you can specify whether it's going to be bigger than, smaller than, is or is not. So for this case, I'm just going to go ahead with the default, which says contains. It doesn't really matter if it's in the middle, if it's in the start, but it will simply contain the element ID MP1. And don't forget that you can also specify whether it's going to be AND or something I want to explain in a little bit in a second. But for this case, let's simply hit OK. Let's see how the schedule will change. And as you can clearly see, it's going to pretty much exclude all the different columns that have the element ID C1. You can also, for example, just going to delete this one real quick, add a criteria and maybe set it by model view, maybe by layer. Because if you remember, we also combined different layers. So you can tell ArchiCAD, okay, select everything, and the layer is going to be set to maybe pilaster over here. So it's going to pretty much select all the columns with the layer that has pilaster, press OK. And as you can see, well, nothing really is going to be changed, but once again, it's going to also exclude all the different columns which are on another layer. You can also, for example, specify these by material. Well, if you, for example, add some type of criteria by material, well, you are going to get many different materials over here. When you notice that ArchiCAD just gives you too many parameters, this is when we might as well search it manually, maybe in construction or maybe in surface and materials. And over here we got building materials. So let's add this one real quick. And now let's indicate ArchiCAD to select everything that is a column and has the building material, which is going to be maybe a concrete of 150, which if I remember, we used this one for the pilasters, and maybe a concrete of 250, which was for the columns. So you can pretty much specify this by material. If you press OK, you will notice that right away nothing else is going to happen. It still will exclude the different columns. But if I reverse the material, let's say it's going to be 250, press OK, you will notice that now it's going to select completely the opposite column, all the columns that have this specific material. Now, something else I want to comment on how you can combine the criteria. Let's say we add another exactly the same type of criteria, which is going to be element type. So let's add a criteria over here by element type. Let's add one over here, and let's specify that it's also going to include maybe the beams. So if you notice over here, we got the AND OR, which I already commented. If you set it to AND, what's going to happen? Well, select everything which is a column and at the same time is a beam. If you press OK, nothing is really going to happen. You are going to get pretty much nothing, because it's completely impossible in ArchiCAD to have an element which is at the same time a column and which is at the same time a beam. But on the contrary, it's possible for an element to be a column or select everything which is a beam. If you set it to OR over here, press OK, you will notice that now you are going to get completely the opposite. ArchiCAD will select all the columns, and it's going to include also the different beams within the same schedule. So keep this small detail in mind, because the and/or is quite important for these cases and will mark the difference between an error or the difference between a correctly executed list. Okay? Now, if you want to take this even further, you can, for example, start using parentheses. You can also combine the different criterias. Well, in this case, by element type is simply not going to work out. So how about we select maybe, let's see if height. I'm not going to execute it, but I'm going to add this maybe 3 times. And let's set a criteria which is going to be parentheses over here. This one is going to be well, the height is going to be equal to 0.50 or equal to 1.50. The height is going to be, let's set it to more than 0.50, and the height is less than 1.50. So pretty much what's going to happen over here, we simply combine these, well, take into consideration these 3 criteria. Let's say we got 3 different columns. We got something as this, and maybe another element over here. Okay, I'm just going to draw this a little bit better. So this column has a height, well, the level 0 is over here. This column has a height of 0.35, the first one. Then the second one will offset, let's say 0.50 centimeters, and has a maximum height of 1 meter. So in total it's going to be 1.50. And the last column will have a height of 3 meters. So for this case, what's going to happen is, since the third column in this case doesn't match the criteria, it's going to exclude it. Also the first column, because we told ArchiCAD you need to select everything which is more than 0.50. And the second column, which meets the criteria, which is more than 0.50 and still less than 1.50, it's going to select it accordingly. So this is how you can start combining different types of criteria. If you want to use parentheses, well, you specify your first criteria, and then you can also combine it with and add an extra layer of criteria. Well, maybe it's also equals to 0.50. So it's going to take into consideration all columns which are more than 0.50 and less than 1.50. And also it's going to consider if it's going to be something specific as 0.25, or it's going to include the column. Okay, so it's just a matter of messing around. You can start playing around with these different combinations. Well, for this case, I'm just going to set it for or, because it's not going to work. But to put it in short words, in this manner, this is how you can start combining even more specific type of criteria to further on fine-tune your selection. Now, besides the criteria, we also have different field parameters over here. I'm just going to delete this real quick. Just going to set it for as columns. So if you notice over here, we got the fields which are element ID, quantity, width, height, etc. Okay, and you got these 4 different icons which have a specific function. So for now, let's simply press OK. Now pay attention on how the first column is going to be sorted. If you notice, it's going to start in alphabetical order, C1, and then it's going to be, position the MP1 type of element ID. But you can sort this completely inverted. So MP1 stays on the top and C1 stays on the bottom. And it's as simple as simply clicking this icon over here. This is how you can sort the element ID. Instead of going down, you can set the icon to be, instead of going up, you simply hit the OK button, and in this manner you can sort your specific field in another specific way. So pretty much the first one is simply how you can sort your elements. If it's deactivated, let's press OK. It's going to anyway sort this however ArchiCAD considers as best. So it's not going to make that much difference, but the difference lays in how you want to specify this first icon. Now, then you got a second icon, which is the sum of the different elements. Let's say we got quantity, which is another field. If you notice over here, ArchiCAD will take into consideration everything exploded, But let's say you want a general quantity of how many columns you got over here. So it's going to sum up these values over here. If you simply hit this icon once, make sure that you hit it once, because if you hit it twice, it's going to have another type of representation. And this one has a completely different type of function, something we're going to comment in a second. But let's simply press OK for now. And now you can see that we get this extra value. So for the field of quantity, it's going to give you the amount of elements you got within your list. You can also combine these, something we're going to get into a second, but if you hit the merge items, it's going to simplify this instantly. So it's just going to give you the general subtotal for C1, subtotal for MP1, and then you have the general total, which is over here. But for this case, the first type of sum is going to be for the measure type of value. Let's see if we can do the same. Well, let's say we sum up the height. We just press this icon once. So it's going to give you a total of 39.20 meters, okay? But there is another type of sum. You can, instead of summing the value itself, which was in this case the height, which basically does 2.80 plus 2.80 to plus 2.80, the next type of sum is going to be by element. How many elements it's going to take into consideration. And as you can see, it's also going to change from 28 something into 14. Because what is going to take into consideration, well, this one is one value, this one is one value, this one is 1, 1, and so on. So it's going to sum 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, and it's going to tell you, okay, right over here we have 14 different values. So to sum it up, this is the difference between this type of sum and this type of sum. One of which is going to be with the value itself, and one of which is the amount of values you have in a specific field. Then you have a specific icon, which is the subtotal. If you activate the sum, let's say for the height, and then you want to also consider a subtotal for the height, you can flag this in this case, simply press OK, and what's going to happen is that you are going to get the extra fields over here. You got the general field, which is the totals of everything, but you will notice that now we get a subtotal for each of the specific data. So it's going to give you a subtotal for everything which is C1, and then it's going to give you a subtotal for everything which is MP1. So in short words, well, the flag is, you can simply assign the flag just to one of the fields. Simply keep this small detail in mind. But you can also use it to mark where you want your subtotals. And finally, but not least, you also got one extra parameters, which is quite new in the last versions of ArchiCAD. So if you don't have it, no need to worry, but this is simply to hide the field. It's still going to be included if you want to make some type of extra formula, but you can simply hide it. Let's simply hide, for example, the element ID and the quantities, press OK. And as you can see, the field is still going to be inserted, or it's still going to be existent, but it's not going to visualize within your schemes. So this icon is simply to hide the different fields. Well, I usually don't even use this, but who knows, maybe you'll find some type of useful application for this icon. So as always, take as much time as you need, try to mess around a little bit with these parameters, and in the next lesson, now we can move on to how you can give your scheme a little bit of extra format. And once we have covered the basics for the criteria, the different parameters we got for the fields, make sure to just close this up by pressing OK, and let's open up the column quantification or whichever schedule you have. So we start covering and talking a little bit about the different parameters we got in order to give this a little bit more format. Now, in first place, the first parameter that I usually tell my students to activate, because this is the one that we usually activate most of the times. As you can see, merge items, as the name implies, it's not going to present everything separated as ArchiCAD does by default, but it's simply going to merge this into one uniform field. Okay, now keep in mind that in order to merge the different elements, they have to match in parameters. This means that, for example, if maybe you have something that has C1, 1, 2.80, 0.15, 0.06, but the second field has maybe the same, except maybe, for example, over here it's going to be 2.60. It's going to pretty much match or merge this field, this one, this one, this one, and these ones, and it's going to exclude this one completely differently. Just keep in mind that everything is always going to be merged as long as the parameters match up with the quantities, match up with the different characteristics. So as you can see, it's simply going to merge everything into simply two different fields. Now you got a show headline, which is basically the different subtitles. Keep in mind that this parameter goes well along with the flag icon we actually used before. So you can, for example, flag it by height, press OK, then activate the show headline, and it's going to give you subtotals for each of the elements. Usually I just deactivate this for now. Let's continue with, for example, the format. You can present the information by columns, okay, or whether you want to present it horizontally, you can click over here and over here. So if you notice, the format is going to completely change. It's going to be presented in vertical or either way in horizontal. So you can choose from these two different styles. Now, just something to keep in mind is that you can, for example, in the same manner as you would with Excel or maybe Google Sheets, you can take each of the columns and start adjusting them manually. So right over here, you can click, left click and hold, drag and drop in order to adjust each of the columns or fields completely manually. You can even, for example, double left click real quick to adjust this automatically to the maximum width, okay? But there is an even much faster way to adjust this automatically almost instantly. Instead of, for example, double clicking each of the fields, each of the columns, what you can do is you got a small icon right over here. If you click this icon, it's going to open up this window. And in this window, you can specify how you want to manage the width in millimeters for each of the columns and how you want to manage the rows. So you can pretty much input the different values manually right over here, whichever value you want to input, or you can do so for in the same manner for the rows. But personally, my favorite function is simply left click over here, resize columns and resize rows to fit the content, which pretty much will automatically resize everything. So with just 2 clicks, left click this, press OK, and with this, the rows and the columns have been resized automatically. So pretty much the first thing that you will do is right over here. Once you create your schedule, the first thing you do is maybe even merge the items, and after that, you straight away go to the sizes of the columns and rows and simply make sure to click these ones so everything adjusts automatically. Now moving on, you also got different parameters. For example, one of the first things you will notice that we got this button over here, the scheme settings. And if you already managed to adjust the different parameters, you can always click over here, go back to this window, adjust even further your different fields, adjust your criteria once again. The second way would be to select your schedule over here and simply activate it over here, settings. This is the second way you can go back to this window, but personally I rather just click over here, scheme settings, and pretty much that's it. Moving on, you also got how you want to apply the format options, whether it's going to be for the entire schedule, maybe just the header, maybe just the values, the totals, grand total, or maybe all types of preview images. Usually I just set it to entire schedule. Then you can specify the raw height, mess around with this parameter. If you notice, it's going to be similar as to something we specify, or the value we can input also for the general sizes, but more simplified with this parameter. You then have the text style. So pretty much what you can do is, for example, select each of these different types of data. Now, something to keep in mind are the titles and are the different types of titles. Okay, you can, for example, right over here, simply straight away change the general title for your schedule. Maybe it's not going to be column quantification, but Let's name it something as column data, something as this. You then can proceed to name each of the specific fields that you're actually managing over here. It's going to give you the default name of each of the fields in your schedule, but you can always go ahead and simply rename it. So maybe instead of element ID, you can name it something more simplified, ID, maybe amount, maybe for the height, specify that it's going to be maybe in parentheses, meters, and just keep doing so until you have the specific names you want for your schedule. It's going to maybe add the cubic meter over here, and with this we have a little bit more clarity with the units. Okay, now for example, for textile you can proceed, select maybe the titles of the fields, and now you can, for example, make them, you can even so, because the changes will apply depending on whichever field you select. You can even, for example, hold down left shift and select pretty much every. So whichever change you make over here, it's going to apply to all the different selected elements. Okay, so we can, for example, make this bold, switch this to maybe 3 millimeters, maybe make this something as red. This general title, make it also bold, maybe change the size. Well, if we change the size, it's going to change it for everything, so it's going to keep it at 3 millimeters. Okay, now we can select, for example, this data over here. Well, if it doesn't select with shift, you can also, for example, experiment a little bit and start changing, and most of the times by just selecting the simple data, it's going to consider the format for all the values or for some type of data. So we can also make this maybe bold, center everything, maybe center these ones over here, and pretty much center each of the fields. Okay, you can mess around with the different parameters. It's up to you how you want to specify the text style. Moving on, you also got, for example, the backgrounds. Now this is something new for me, I'm going to be honest with you, because this is something that I'm pretty sure we're going to find in ArchiCAD 27 or 26 in the last versions of ArchiCAD. So I'm pretty sure that now we can, for example, specify the colors for each of the cells. There we go. And right over here you can start adjusting even further your format. We can even specify that it's going to be some type of stripe. In the same manner as with Excel, which is quite easy to understand, the stripes is going to manage one color yes, one color no. You can combine different colors and mess around to generate your format, which is, to be honest with you, quite amazing. This is something I haven't used yet in ArchiCAD, but to be honest, it's good to know that now we can further customize even more the different schedules. Then we got the border. It's the same as with Excel. You can, for example, select one of the fields, set it to separators only, and you just get a horizontal line. Same will go for the titles, maybe set it to just horizontal lines. You can even, for example, mess around with the type of line, so it's going to be dashed, or even so leave it as solid. But to sum it up, as you can notice, this is pretty much the same as with Excel, Microsoft Excel, or Google Sheets, or most of the different spreadsheet software that we can find. The same will happen right over here inside ArchiCAD. So as always, take as much time as you need. What I want you to do is mess around a little bit with the different format options we got over here. Don't forget that you got this amazing icon to adjust everything in just one simple go, and you can always click over here to specify the scheme settings. And keep in mind that this button over here is also really important, because it's going to merge everything. Instead of having everything separated, it's going to merge everything into one field. Okay, don't forget that also you can specify you want the totals for each of the elements, press OK, and now you can also specify the format for the different totals you get in your project. Now we have commented so far the different functions, so you can start generating these types of schedules, different types of quantifications, but something else I also want to share with you is how you can start adjusting the 2D visualization and include it within your schedule. So For this case, how about we just make sure to create a quick schedule bot, which is going to be a Dur schedule. For this case, let's go over here, elements, right click it, new schedule. Let's name it something as Dur table or Dur schedule, however you want to name this. Just going to set it to maybe Dur table or Dur schedule, so it's a little bit more international. Let's press OK. The element type is going to be, for this case, we definitely want to select all the Durs. And the type of data that we can include, well, it's going to start off always with element ID. To be honest with you, element ID, I usually just use it as a golden rule. I usually include it because this is the ID that will help us to differentiate each of the elements. For example, let's add something as maybe as a nominal. This one is quite amazing because it gives you all the different dimensions for your opening. We can also include, for example, maybe the quantity right over here. And now for the visualization parameters. What you are going to do is right over here in general parameters, you will notice that we got different fields over here. You can include 2D cross-section preview, 2D plan preview, 3D axonometry. This one is quite useful, especially for the furniture once we create the catalog in the upcoming lessons. You can for example include back views, a front view. I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't noticed these ones before. I'm pretty sure that this is a new improvement in the last versions of ArchiCAD. So if you can install the last version of ArchiCAD and stop using 25 or 26, yeah, definitely you should go with 27 because I think these ones open up just way too many opportunities. For windows and doors, what you are going to do is you are going to use these ones. View from opening side, reveal side, side opposite to reveal. So these 4 parameters will give you pretty much this type of visualization. The elevation view and the 2D view is a general parameter. So for this example, how about we include maybe the view from opening side in one instance. And in the general parameter, let's include, how about we include the 2D plan preview. So we can visualize this on the ground floor or on the plan view. So I'm just going to adjust this a little bit. Let's press OK. And let's go over here, Dur schedule. So in first place, as you can notice, it's going to be a little bit messy. So for this case, what I'm going to ask you is to apply the trick that I already told you. You can simply change the records, maybe by columns in first place. In second, you can merge the items. And in third place, just click over here, the cell size settings, and simply click the resize button and resize button. Press OK. And with this, that's pretty much it for the format, for the main adjustments you require for this schedule. Now, from now on, what you can do is select each of the titles, rename them, mess around with this parameter. I'm not going to repeat the process too much, but how about we just focus on the format that we can apply for the visualization. So, for example, once you activate or select with left click one of the 2D elements, you will notice that now we get these specific options we got over here, which has a preview group. You can, for example, override the different pens. If you don't do so, it's going to take the original pens that are included within the elements. So this is the reason why it's going to display in orange, because the pen set for this project, if I go over here to one of the views, the original pen set for doors and windows is still in orange, or this one over here. But what you can do if you don't want it to be orange, you can simply select the visualization, click over here, disable this one, and maybe apply some type of new pen for the contour. You can make it gray, so as you can see it's going to change, or make it completely black. I leave this decision up to you. Then you got something extremely important, which is the scale. At which scale you want to present this visualization. So you can set it to be fixed, maybe 1:50, or right over here you can click the set drawing scale and maybe input something different, something maybe 1:25, press OK. And now as you can see, this schedule, this table, or this visualization is going to be much bigger than before. Once again, you can click this icon, resize and resize, just left click, press OK, and it's going to fit everything inside the table. So in this manner, you can control a little bit further the sizes that you can include within this table. Now, moving on, you can also, for example, align, well, the align is referred to actually the automatic dimensions. Now, this function is amazing because if you simply left click this, it's completely amazing because ArchiCAD will dimension each of the 2D visualization automatically for you. So you don't need to even do anything because ArchiCAD will do everything for you. And once again, just click over here, cell size settings, resize and resize, press OK. And now, as you can see, all the doors are being dimensioned. You have a dimension over here and another one on beneath. Now you can control which position you want for your dimensions, whether it's going to be on the right, on the left, on the top. Right over here in the dimension settings, just click this over here, dimension settings. You can specify which part of the door you want to dimension, whether it's going to be with the wall hole, the rebuild size, maybe you want to dimension the leaf size or just the nominal size. I leave this decision up to you. Usually I set it to wall hole size, okay? You got an offset. I'm going to set it maybe a little bit less because I feel it's just way too much. So I'm just going to set it to maybe 150, half the original value. And right over here, the dimension position is where you want to specify the location for each of the dimensions. What I usually set it to is left side, above and left. So if we press OK, as you can see, the dimension is a little bit closer to the door, and now it's going to be positioned on the left and on the top. And now, from now on, it's just a matter of continue to mess around with this parameter. But as you can see, it's quite simple, quite easy to understand and work with. There is another trick that you can also apply. Let's say we want to specify, okay, let's say this is not a door schedule, but it's a window schedule. Just going to open up the brochure real quick. But as you can see in the window schedule, something quite useful to also include are the different annotations. For example, whether if this part is fixed or this one is going to be the sliding part. If you have some type of sliding window, then you can start specifying the different annotations, whether it is going to be aluminum, which size is going to be, which type of glass you are going to use over here. You can do so by simply selecting this preview. And once you select it, you will notice that right over here, you can see the annotate button, which is completely awesome because what you can do is select it, left click over here, annotate. It's going to open up let's say a mini preview, which is completely free, and you can customize this however you want. So for example, you can take the label tool over here, make it completely independent. For this case, the associative method is simply not going to work. If you activate the associative or maybe click over here, it's not going to detect anything. So make sure to activate the independent one. Now you can create some type of annotation over here. And yeah, of course, you need to specify a little bit further your annotation. Just going to include it. Maybe it's basic with a pointer, so it's something as this. Double click it and maybe specify that this one is going to be glass. Then create another label for this one over here. Let's pick up the parameters with the droplet tool. Let's left click and let's specify that this one is going to be the frame, aluminum, something like this. Hopefully I wrote it well because my English is not perfect. And yeah, the idea here is that you can start adjusting this however you want and including as many specifications as you want. You can even take the dimension tool, you can dimension this size over here, include some type of interior dimensions for your door, one over here, or maybe one here, and so on. So this is completely free, you can customize this however you want. But the idea here is completely clear. So you can add text, add any type of label, dimension, all types of annotations. But the best thing over here is that ArchiCAD will automatically draw the door for you, and in short terms this is where 60% of the work will lie if we are working in AutoCAD. And once you are done specifying all the different annotations you require for your door, just press the OK button over here, left click, and pretty much that's it. So if you notice, the schedule now is a little bit more customized, and all the annotations are included within this setting over here. So as always, take as much time as you need. Make sure to mess around a little bit with the different parameters. With this, we have pretty much covered the different functions for the schedules. And now, if I remember well, we can continue now with something a little bit more practical. Alright, so this is an extra lesson I've decided to record and include with extra emphasis, because I was already recording the practical part. But you have two amazing functions over here, which is select in 2D and select in 3D. And let's make a quick example. I'm just going to make a completely new schedule because the one who is recording is Valentine from the future. Let's create a new schedule, which is going to be walls. Okay, let's press a new button over here. Let's make it walls number 1. Walls, as simple as it is. Press OK. And now you can select your walls over here. Let's add, for example, element ID. Okay, let's add maybe the quantity. And let's add from the wall parameters. You will notice that you got just way too many parameters, and you are unsure which is the one you are actually seeking, which is the one you actually need, which is the one which is going to extract that specific measurement you actually need for your project. So how about we add everything? Length of reference line. Let's add the length of the wall on the inside and on the outside. Okay, I'm just missing the quantity. I'm just going to add this real quick, and let's drag this a little bit to the top. So just as a quick example, make just any type of schedule. As you can see, let's open up the walls. Everything is going to be exploded. I'm just going to resize this real quick so everything is a little bit more understandable. And don't forget that you have this button over here, which you can press in order to fit your schedule in the window. Okay, I'm just going to make this smaller. This one is going to be smaller. And finally, this one is going to be smaller. Okay, now there are many practical applications when you are quantifying stuff and you are quite unsure. Maybe you see something which is maybe this element over here, and you are like, okay, what's going on here? Where this data is coming from? Or maybe why does this data say 550? So what you can do, something amazing with the schedules, is that you can press or select any type of that data that is giving you trouble. Let's say, okay, I'm not really sure where this 6.20 is coming from. Just make sure to select it. And right over here, you will notice that you have two options. Select on the floor plan or select in 3D. If you select this in 3D, keep in mind that this is another specific detail. If you have something filtered out, first things first, right click it and make sure that you activate the show all function. So the whole model is visualizing, okay? Or simply open up the finished model you currently have saved over here, deactivate any type of cutaway you have in your project, and when your 3D is completely reset, what you can do is go back to your schedule, which is the walls over here, and try again. Let's select this 6.20, I'm not sure where it's coming from, and let's select it in 3D. If you notice, ArchiCAD will instantly redirect your view to the selected element over here. And now what you can do is right click it, show selection option over here, and you can start measuring, okay, where this 6.20 is coming from. You can, for example, measure this to the end, and in this manner simply verify, okay, I'm pretty sure that the 620 is coming from somewhere from this element. You can measure it by the center, you can measure it by the inside. In this case, I measured it by the outside, right where the paint or the final plastering skin is finished. if you notice, the 6.20 is from this point up until this point. And this is how ArchiCAD is quantifying this wall in the particular case. Now let's make another example. If you notice, length of the wall on the inside face, well, in my case it's completely the opposite. If we you got 5.21, which is exactly the same wall. Let's select this 5.21, select in 3D, and now you can measure this completely freely. Let's see how much we get from this point to this point. And if you notice, this 5.21 is coming up from this point up until this point. And the same will happen for the reference line. ArchiCAD will measure everything. So to sum it up, this is quite an extremely powerful and useful function because you can select in 2D and 3D where the numbers are coming from. For example, finally, let's select maybe this 24. Let's select it on the floor plan, and ArchiCAD will instantly open up the view and will tell you, okay, what I'm quantifying is pretty much these 6 elements, and this is where the 24 is coming from. So as always, take a moment, give it a try. Just want to clarify something extremely important. If you, for some reason, this is grayed out because it's possible it's not going to be available once you select your element, what you have to do is make sure to first off save the schedule in the view map. Because if it's grayed out, it means that the layers are turned off or the 3D elements are simply deactivated, and ArchiCAD won't be able to select it in 3D. So first things first, save up the schedule in the view map and make sure that you have the correct layer combination assigned to this schedule. In this manner, you can make sure that it will be completely available, this small function you got over here. Alright, and having covered the core functions for the schedules, before we move on to something practical, I would like to cover a few extra quite useful functions, such as, for example, how you can manage the schedules internally within ArchiCAD, especially when you are positioning them in the layouts, how you can reformat them, how you can position them, and also how you can export these to external software, such as, for example, Excel, or in XLSX format, which is a basic Excel format, and start using it somewhere else. Okay, so before we do this, how about we take a moment and we make sure to save this view. So yeah, that's completely possible. Keep in mind and don't forget that the schedules over here are pretty much treated in the same manner as you would treat the ground floor, the sections, elevations, pretty much all the views you got in the project map. Well, the same will happen for the schedules. So you can assign some basic filters, but for this case, well, it's going to be a little bit different because we don't get the bottom bar over here. So in this case, just proceed to save it directly. We can just create a new folder, name it something as schedules over here. We are going to use this folder anyway once we get into the practical activity where we are going to create the schedule for each type of format we got in the example. So let's select the folder and let's straight away hit the save current view. So if you notice over here, you will get some filters which also apply and definitely will make a difference. So for example, if you turn off some elements with the layer combinations, it's possible that you are going to get some type of trouble, or maybe some elements won't appear. So keep in mind that the layer combinations will also impact. If the architectural layer combination works, well, leave it at that type of combination. Okay, the pen set is also useful, especially when you are trying to overwrite something in the preview box over here. But since we assigned something else, I'm not going to modify this either. Okay, so for this case, how about we just set it as it is, simply create the schedule. Yeah, now just be careful because if you notice, everything has turned a little bit less. So how about we maybe mess around a little bit with the scale. Once again, we can select this image, set the scale over here to maybe 1 to 25. And I think the best way to fix this would be just right click it and activate the redefine with current Windows setting. So in this case, if we open up another type of view and go back to the schedules, it's still going to give us trouble. Well, the plan B would be, you can also, for example, activate the schedule, go over here to settings, and maybe try to change the scale to a custom one, maybe set it to right over here to 1 to 25. Trying to guess that in this manner it's going to be completely fixed. So if we go back to this view and then go back to schedules, yeah, it's pretty much fixed. So you can try the preview, but if it doesn't work out, keep in mind that the scale you set in the schedules once you save the view will also make a difference. Okay, so to put in short words, just hit the save button over here and be careful with the parameters. Okay, now let's make a small example. How about we just open any type of sheet? You can open up any type of layout, any type of sheet. Once you have saved your view, what you can do is straight away drag it and drop it in the sheets. If it's asking you for a layer, just make sure to specify the layer, maybe set it for now in the ArchiCAD layer, press OK. And with this, if you notice, ArchiCAD will treat the schedules as a basic view. So for example, you can combine now maybe the door plan or the carpentry plan. You can set it maybe in the center, somewhere you want to set it. Well, in this case, it's going to be a little bit too small. And you can also combine it with your tables. So you got the specifications for your door, and you got the reference where these doors are going to be positioned. Okay, so this is how you can start combining different views to create your constructive documentation. Now there are a few things we also need to comment. I'm just going to set maybe this outside over here. I'm just going to set maybe this one inside, just for explanation purposes, but you can set it up however you want. Now you can also left click in one of the corners, and if you notice something we also covered in basic BIM framework, specifically in the section about the layouts, we already commented about the different possibilities we got with all the parameters. You can start adjusting the frame. Now this is quite amazing because the scales will be treated a little bit differently. You can also adjust the frame, but if you notice it's going to cut up the frame a little bit differently. So in this case, well, it's not going to do any better. So how about we simply reset it by selecting the view, going to the parameters, and in the parameters don't forget that the fit to frame to drawing or fit frame to drawing option is going to reset the frame. Okay, then you can adjust the nodes if you want to cut up the information. You can also treat it however you want, but if I remember well, you can also stretch it, make it bigger, make it smaller. In this case, it's not going to cut the schedule, but actually just make it smaller and bigger. But you got an amazing function over here, which, to be honest with you, it's better if we actually add extra information, maybe some type of doors, some type of different windows, which is called the restructure table. So how does this command work? If you get a lot of information and maybe it's way too vertical and you want it to be a little bit more horizontal, you can set it to be horizontal. Once again, if you notice, it's not going to work for this case. So what I'm going to do is, how about we simply delete this schedule? Maybe we can go back to the model. I'm just going to make it temporarily. I'm just going to add maybe a few types of doors. Okay, so in my case, besides just 2 doors, I added 1, 2, 3, 4 more types of doors. And in consequence, the schedule will also update automatically, which is quite amazing now. And now, as you can see, we got a more horizontal type of format, which is something most likely you are going to have in a real project, maybe even 20 types of doors, not just 2, even more types of doors. And in consequence, if we go back to the layouts and we drag and drop this schedule once again, as you can see, it's going to be more horizontal. Now, this command is quite amazing because you can click on one of the nodes, activate the restructure table. Let's say we want maybe something as this. If you notice, what's going to happen is that ArchiCAD will cut up the original schedule, which is original horizontal format, in 1 and 2 parts. You got one part over here you got another new part over here, which is this one over here, and then you got the final part, which was something as this, okay? Or maybe you can once again restructure it, maybe set it to completely vertical, because you have some type of vertical space in your layout. So if you notice, ArchiCAD automatically cuts up the schedule for you and will feed it accordingly to your own needs. So if you are planning to include schedules in layouts, don't forget that you got this completely amazing type of command, which is going to save you just so much time. And from now on, you can simply treat this as any type of view. You can, for example, scale this down all together and include maybe the visualization here, cut this up over here, and you get something like this, okay? So as always, just make sure to take some time, check out how you can save your schedule in the view map, and check out how you can manage it in the layouts. And the most important thing, don't forget that one extremely important parameter for when saving the schedules is the scale, because this also defines how big or how small your visualization is. And finally, but not least, let's comment now how you can export this to external software such as Excel, or well, in my case it's going to be Google Sheets, but you can export this in multiple types of formats and open the schedule in external software or share it with whoever you want. So what you can do is straight away simply open up the schedules, make sure this is open, and you can simply go over here to the menu bar, hit the file, save as. It's straight away simple and directly as file save as. I'm just going to save it on the desktop. But right over here you get multiple types of formats, which is defined by the schedule. So you can pretty much export this in PDF format. You got the Excel worksheets, which would be the XLS type of format, or the Excel workbook, which is the basic XLSX type of format. You can export this as a doc file, which is quite useful, but you can select from any type of format you want to use. How about for this case, I'm just going to set it to maybe Excel. You can set it to open the file after saving this, and ArchiCAD will do the rest. So let's give it a try. Let's hit that save button. And as you can see right over here, I got my door schedule open in the preview version of Excel. So as you can see clearly, ArchiCAD will treat everything as an image, and it's going to be completely possible to edit it further in Excel. And the images that are being generated will be embedded within the Excel file. I'm just going to give it another trial. How about we open this up in maybe Google Sheets? And as you can see, same will happen in Google Sheets. Well, this is personally my preferred spreadsheet editor, but you can continue editing everything and treat it normally. So you can share this with whoever you want. And it's amazing that ArchiCAD will convert everything for you, something that doesn't happen so easily in Revit without plugins or directly, but in ArchiCAD it's completely possible. And with this, we can put now an end to reviewing the different core functions for the schedules in ArchiCAD. As you notice, it's quite a versatile and powerful function you can apply not just to quantify pretty much anything within your project, but also create quite amazing tables, catalogs, schedules. Use it for multiple types of functions, okay? Now, in the next lessons, we are going to continue covering particular functions, particular uses in order to solve some real case scenarios. For example, we are going to quantify from the pilot project we are working on as a foundation, maybe create this type of confinement quantification. Then I'll explain how you can extract just one material from your composite wall and just quantify this. I'll explain how you can work the surface schedule and also some particularities for each of the different graphical schedules we got over here. But to be honest with you, it's just a matter of combining the different functions we have covered in the previous lessons. Alright, so let's put everything to the practice by working on the different examples we got over here. And how about we start simply with the foundation. So the fields are just straight away named over here. You can add the ID for your foundations, amount, materials, width, etc. Okay, so for this case, I'm just going to delete the door schedule, maybe the example we had in the previous lessons. And I'm just going to delete the 3D doodles over here to reset this as how it was. Now let's go back to the project map we got over here. I'm just going to make sure, maybe even so delete all the rest of the basic schedules we got on the template. Well, from a practical point of view, yeah, you might want to keep this one on. This is the only one that is proven to be useful for me, well, in my case, because this one is the one that will be included by default when you export your project to BeamX. And this is something we already covered in Basic BIM Framework in the last section, if I remember well, when we commented which information you can include. And just keep this schedule on point, but you can delete pretty much all of the different schedules, okay? Let's right click it, new schedule. Let's name this as foundation quantification. I'm just going back to go back to ArchiCAD, quantities 1, and name this foundation quantification, okay, or foundation schedule, however you want to name this. Let's hit OK. Now let's make sure that we select all the foundation that the project has. You can select it with multiple criteria, but I think it's going to be much easier if we simply add the layer, because if I remember well, everything is already set in the correct layer. So let's select the foundation over here, all types, foundation, okay, and now let's start adding up the different fields. So in first place we of course have the ID, or you can search it for ID element or element ID over here. Let's add this one up. Then we got the amount, the materials, and the different measurements. So let's go back to ArchiCAD. Let's add up the amount, the quantity for this case, height. Well, since this one is treated as a beam, you can also add the heights from the beams, but you got multiple possibilities. You can add the height from beam, wall. It's dependent on which tool you use to model the foundation. But in this case, we might as well go to the general parameters and search for the parameter in general. So you can have the height just in general. You can take the height over here. You can take the width, which is this one over here. You can take, for example, the volume, okay, we got volume, height, width. We also got the length. So let's make sure to add this real quick. Length, general parameters, length. Well, 3 length doesn't convince me that much. But you can, okay, let's see how 3 length works. But let's try to check out how the length for the wall will also work. Since I remember that I've used, I'm just going to check real quick. Just going to press OK for now. This one will stay saved. How about we go real quick to the foundation? And if I remember well, we model this with the wall tool. So in this case, we might extract this as a reference line from the wall. Okay. Let's right click on the quantification foundation schedule. Right click it, scheme settings over here, and add fields for the walls. We might extract the length of the reference line. I'm pretty sure that this one is going to work out just a little bit better, but we can see how it works out. So we got something as this, which are the element ID, quantity, then we got all the different measurements, the length, the width, the height, then we got the volume. I'm just going to leave 3 length on the very last to check out if it makes any difference with this parameter. And now we are simply missing the last parameter, which would be the material. So in this case, same thing. Let's simply search for materials over here. We got many of these types of parameters. This is more of a little bit more complex type of function, which is due to properties, metadata and properties. But for the building materials, we can try out this one, which is general parameters, building materials, everything that's included. So let's just drag this up real quick. And now I'm pretty sure that everything is. Let's press OK. And let's open up the schedule. Let's see how this will work. If you notice, everything is exactly the same. For this case, we might as well try to consider, okay, we might as well merge everything because it doesn't really make a difference for this particular context. And in second place, how about we just set this real quick to the vertical type of format. Now, once you set this to the vertical, don't forget to just adjust the cell size for each of the columns and each of the rows. Right over here, don't forget you got this small icon, hit over here and click on these two options over here. Press OK. Yeah, it's still just going to make this smaller. You can also click over here to adjust or fit the whole schedule in Windows. So just click this icon, it's going to fit. If you notice, the building materials is quite extensive, so I might simply take manually the column, make it a little bit smaller over here, something as this, okay, and this one might be even smaller, something as this. So yeah, everything is looking decent, but if you notice over here, the 3D length is going to be 26 for some reason, and the reference line length is going to be 24. Now, this is where there are just two functions that are extremely practical. If you are not sure which one is the correct one, my best advice here is you can select your element, and right over here you will notice that we got these extra two icons, which are extremely useful. Now, you got select this element on floor plan and select it on 3D. Let's see how it works in 3D. If you notice, it's going to open up automatically the 3D view, and it's going to select each of the elements. And this is where you can start measuring your element to make sure which is the correct data. So we got this element which is going to measure, this one is going to be 6 meters in length, okay? And let's see how much it measures on the outside. For this case, it's going to be 6.85. Going to remember this real quick. I'm going to ungroup everything. So length of reference line is going to be 3 meters, and then 6 meters. And then for some reason, 3D length is going to be 5.80 and 6.90. I'm pretty sure that this 6.90, if I select it once again in 3D, is going to measure the very tip of the element, maybe from this point up until this point. And there you go, 6.90. So as you can see, it's clearly easy to understand with this function, selecting 2D and or selecting 3D. You can use it to clearly understand where your data is coming from. And now that I'm sure that, okay, the reference line is actually the data that I need, because this one will tell me this is 6, and the other one will measure something else, or vice versa. In your particular case, you can decide which data you want to keep. So in this case, what I'm going to do is right-click the foundation schedule, scheme settings, and I'm simply going to remove this 3D length because I think that length of reference line is going to work out a little bit better for this particular case. Okay, let's once again merge everything. And okay, for some reason it didn't delete it. Remove this, press OK. And now the last part would be to simply give it just a little bit of format. So I'm just going to take a few minutes. I'm going to rename each of the cells I got over here, and I'm going to give it a little bit extra format. And having specified the format, now I'm more than happy with the current style. Okay, so let's proceed with the last part. Just make sure to go to the view map, and right over here in schedules, make sure to finally but not least, make sure to save the current schedule, press create, so it stays completely saved up. Let's switch to another view and let's go back to this one, and if you notice, everything is pretty much ready. As always, take as much time as you need. Make sure to finish up the first table, the first example you require for the project. Just as an extra detail, if you notice, you can also control the amount of decimal places you want for your data. Don't forget that you can do so from options, project preferences, working units, and dimensions. This is where you can mess around with the parameters to also specify the amount of decimal places you want for your project. Alright, and moving on, let's continue now with the confinement quantification. Now, this is going to be a little bit different because we are going to include columns and beams in the same schedule, two different elements. And this is one of the reasons why maybe this column will have this missing type of information, but this is something you can always start adjusting, combining to see which works best. So for this case, let's start off with a completely new schedule. Let's go back to the project map we got over here, and let's right click in Elements, New Schedule, and let's make it quantification number 2. I think this is the idea I'm using. For the name, it's going to be confinement schedule, okay? It's going to be elements. Let's press OK. Now, in element type, what we have to do is we are going to add up the layer criteria twice, one for the pilasters and one for the bond beams. Let's simply leave it at all types, but let's make sure that it's set to end. The first layer is going to be let's select it and make sure it stays on pilaster. And then the second layer is going to be bond beams and lintels over here. Now, if we set this as by default to end, it's simply not going to work. You have to select the first layer and set this to OR. So what's going to happen is select everything, and the layer is going to be in pilasters, or the layer is going to be the bond beams. It's going to select both of the elements at the same time. If you set it to end, it's impossible for an element to be in two layers at the same times, okay? Now, for the info or the fields that we are going to extract, just follow up the titles you got over here. You got the ID, you got the quantity, height, width, length, materials, volume. It's almost pretty much the same as we got over here. So just take a minute, make sure to add your fields, and make sure to occasionally press OK, check out how it behaves, and go back to adjust it. Alright, so pretty much in my case, I've set it to these parameters over here. You can pause it, you can check it out. With height, well, almost everything is a general parameter. But to be honest with you, I feel that I'm having a little bit of trouble with this 3D length parameter. So if you notice, we got something weird going on here, which doesn't convince me at all, because if I remember my confinement pilasters, my vertical confinement has a height of 2.80, which is reflected over here, and as a section width, which is equal for both sides, which is 0.15. So these are just the two data that I actually need. But the bond beams will have a width of and height of 0.15 by 20, and the 3D length doesn't convince me that much. So how about we maybe add an extra parameter, just compare how it works with 3D length. I'm just going to go back to the add field option over here. Since we modeled the bond beams using the beam tool, you can simply open up the beam tool over here. You can even try to experiment with maybe beam cross section. Let's add this just to check it out. You got length left, length right. You can even use these two over here, should work quite decently. And for this case, I'm just going to add these 3 extra parameters, see how they behave. Okay, let's press OK. And let's now contrast a little bit the results. So yeah, the beam cross section, I was expecting some type of measurement, but it's going to simply tell you whether it's rectangular, circular, or a specific type of section. It might come in handy in some specific situations, but for this one, it's not going to work out. Let's press OK. Then we got length left and length right. If we contrast this to the 3D length, we get something completely different. So if you notice 1.95, which is a little bit less, then we got 240, 240, and this completely changes with the example we got over here. So I believe that, yeah, since in my example I made sure that this is correct because I made sure to measure everything, 1.50, 1.30, yeah, I'm seeing the same results over here. So if these two are the same and this one is a little bit less, I rather have leftover data than the complete opposite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the 3D length, because I believe that this one is going to give us trouble. And we can take either way, the left or the right, because it's pretty much the same. So just going to keep maybe one of these, adjust it a little bit over here, press OK. And now from the data point of view, yeah, it's pretty much set, but we are still getting these weird type of elements for some reason. And this is where we can apply the small trick that I explained you earlier, which was select on floor plan, select in 3D, or even so, just simply click it and change the data. So don't forget that if this is grayed out, first things first, you need to save your schedule. So make sure to jump into the view map, and let's make sure to first save up this schedule. I'm just going to set it ID and name the same, but the layer combination, well, this one is giving us trouble. Let's set it to maybe the model that has everything, maybe something as furniture. Let's press the create button over here, and with this, I believe that, yeah, as you can see now, it's completely possible to select it. Let's select it in 3D. Let's see what is going on over here. And it's not even selecting the element, actually. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm having a little bit of trouble trying to guess where this weird stuff is coming from. There will be some occasions where you might experience something where you select this element and select in 3D, doesn't select anything. So if you're pretty sure that this information doesn't need to be included and maybe it's somewhere else from your model, there is a simple way to fix it, because I already made sure to count up how many different bond beams I got in my project. In total I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which are reflecting completely correctly over here. We have 5, 6, 7, but this definitely is not going to be included. So in this case, as the simplest way to fix this would be, let's go back to scheme settings. So what we can do over here is quite simple. Just add as a criteria by element ID right over here. And you can specify that element ID will contain the BB1, which was the ID you used to classify the bond beams, okay? Now, if you set it as it is, just BB1, what's going to happen is it's going to delete the weird stuff, but it's also going to delete your pilasters, which were MP1 or whichever ID you want to use. So in this case, we also need to add the same criteria once again, element ID twice, and do the same, or over here and specify contains MP1. So now it's going to select all the elements which are in these layers and all the elements that also contain this type of ID. Let's press OK, see how it behaves, and as you can see, it actually did exclude that weird stuff going on over here, and now we got the BB1 and MP1 type of elements, okay? So from now on, it's just a matter of applying a little bit of extra format for this table, something I'm going to take a minute for. And finally, but not least, just to double check, if you want to right click it and redefine with current view settings, just to make sure that everything is completely set. So in this manner, we got the first quantification ready. The second one is, pretty much ready in this case. Just a small extra tip, which is quite obvious. You can click over here to hide the schedule parameters over here, or to show them and just visualize the quantification. Okay, so as always, take as much time as you need. Make sure that the second type of quantification is completely set. You can program the format however you want. Just going to keep it simple. And for the next lesson, now we can continue and go on to something a little bit more interesting, which would be the wall components quantification. Alright, so let's move on to the next example, which would be the component schedule. Now this one will have a similar workflow, but just a few tweaks and tricks that we can also apply. Because what we want to do for this case, if I open up the model, well, I got my example also, but I'll open up the finished model just for now. Let's select this wall and maybe press F5 to isolate it. What we want to do is simply quantify, or from all these different skins, just the interior block. Or you can also apply the workflow to maybe quantify the exterior plastering skin or the final finish on the interior. You can apply the workflow in multiple ways. For this case, what we are going to do in first place is try to identify, or tell ArchiCAD to identify the interior skin, which is the hollow concrete block, and also take into consideration the subtraction that is happening thanks to the pilasters we got inside. So this is a plus that we can also consider. Okay, now to start off, how about I'm just going to open up this real quick, the solved example I got in Spanish. If you notice right over here, we use the component type of schedule, but we have to select a wall and then we have to proceed to select the nucleus. This is something really important when specifying the selection. And then you'll get special type of fields that you can extract in order to specify the given information. Because what we want to do is select the hollow block, specify how much it has of width, specify the length, the area, volume, and of course quantify the finishes on the interior, the exterior, and all the data that you want to extract. So for this case, let's jump into our own example. I'm just going to deactivate maybe the cutting plane over here. Let's go back to the schedules, but in this case, you don't want to use the elements. Now this one is going to be a little bit more specific. We are going to use the components. Just going to delete the schedules that we get by default on the template. Select them, you can delete them anyway, no worries there. And then right click on the components. Right click, new schedule. Let's make it something as quantification number 3. The name is going to be hollow block schedule, something as this. Hollow block quantifications. You can put whichever name you want. And in the type of scheme, make sure that it's selected and positioned on elements. You can also specify that it's going to be components and then simply press OK. With this you are pretty much set and you have everything ready. Now first things first, we need to be careful which element we select and how we select it. Of course we are going to take the wall because the composites are applied to a wall. And now let's add a criteria. My best guess for the English version, I'm not sure what it's going to be, but let's type in something as type. Just press type. You'll notice that in construction we get something as component type. Let's see how both of these work out. So structure type, structure type is going to allow you to specify whether the wall is a basic wall, a composite, or a complex profile, but in general aspect. And in this case, since we don't want to select just the composites, because even so, the walls are already a composite, so it doesn't really matter, let's set it to be a component type. And let's specify that we are going to extract. You can specify over here whether it's going to be the core, the finish, or another type of element, or in other words, the intermediate finish or the plastering. For this case, since we are quantifying the interior, the hollow block, we want to extract just the core. Okay. Now, if I remember in my example, I also added an extra type of criteria, because what's going to happen is that it's going to also consider the parapet wall we got on the top. If I open up real quick the model to show you, don't forget that we got the composite wall over here, but we also got the complex profile element over here. So in this case, well, actually the component structure, if we take the structure type, can actually come in handy, if I'm honest with you, because right over here, since we have two different walls, one of which is a composite and another one which is a complex profile, right over here we can specify, okay, you are going to take the wall which is a composite and you are just going to select from this composite just the core. Or another way to specify the correct selection would be, for example, if I remove this criteria, you can specify maybe the positioning, and you can specify the home story to be simply just select everything which is on the ground floor. I don't really want the parapet wall on the roof floor, so just select whatever is on the ground floor. I leave this decision up to you as usual, and now let's start adding up the fields. So we got the ID as per usual, then we got the core material, then the measurements. So let's go ahead and let's add up the fields, starting up with... Okay, before we jump, I want to point out something interesting. If you notice over here, since we are selecting just the core for a composite, once you get into the fields, you will notice that we get this extra section, which is quite amazing, because right over here you can start extracting the composite cross-section area, the fill outline pen, the thickness, the volume, whether it's going to be net, whether it's going to be grass. Something I already commented, because you can quantify your wall whether it's complete, or you can quantify whether you take into consideration the subtraction you got with your pilasters, with your columns. Don't forget that this one is net, okay, and the gross is as you would quantify the wall as a complete element. You can, well, there are just many different parameters you can specify from this component element. Let's start off with the ID. Okay, ID element. Was going to write it in Spanish. Let's proceed with the material. Let's see how this one is going to work out, because I have my few doubts, but we can take something as the building material name should work fine, because if you remember, we assigned the correct material. But if you want to also specify it by surface, go ahead and take the surface. So now we need to specify all the measurements, which are going to be the component volume, but just the net element, rectangular component height, and rectangular component width. And if I remember, also something we can take into consideration would be the reference line length, which is this one over here, length of the reference line. Yeah, we should be careful with this one, because if we visualize the wall as in a ground floor, it's going to quantify it as a complete element. But what happens if you got a column over here? What happens if you got a column and column? Or the actual length for the wall would be from this point and the middle points, not considering the space we got inside the column. So you gotta be careful with this one. Maybe take it from another part. You can always, for example, even use formulas. This is something a little bit more advanced, but if you don't find a parameter which just takes into consideration the interior of the reference line, you can always, for example, mix this parameter with some type of formula. Okay, so let's say maybe you have the full value, which is going to be x, and maybe you can divide it or subtract maybe 3 by 0.15, something as this. You can always mix it up with different types of formulas, which is something amazing. But this is a little bit more of an advanced function, something I cover in future courses. For now, I'm just going to leave it as the reference line. So let's see what else we got. So we got we got pretty much all the measurements, the volume, and also we can include a little bit of the finishes, something you have to be extra careful about. Because if you notice over here, you got many different types of areas. You got project component area, which is the net area. Then you got air skin thickness. I'm pretty sure if we search for area, we're just going to get a lot of different possibilities. Let's see how it works out in the end. Maybe take surface area in general, maybe takes the surface area of the wall outside face net. Well, these are some really long names, but let's see how these three parameters behave. Okay, so it's just a matter of trial and error, trying to check out the different parameters. Just make sure to press OK, and let's open up the schedule and let's see how it turned out. So first things first, let's merge everything, but if you notice, it's not going to merge it because pretty sure all the elements are different. Now this is something a little bit quite important, because if you notice and if you remember, we haven't set the correct ID for the different walls. And using this opportunity, you have two different ways to set the ID. One would be the traditional way, where you go to your finished model and simply select maybe in 3D with the first wall, simply jump into the ID and properties, name it wall 1, then you select the next one, wall 2, wall 3, wall 4, and so on. But you have the possibility now with the schedule. If you got your hollow block quantification, and especially this element ID, something to take into consideration is that you can, for example, directly select each of the walls and simply rename it. So this is quite an amazing possibility that ArchiCAD offers you to directly change some of the parameters that you extract with the schedule. And of course, everything that you specify over here is going to automatically update for the 3D model. So with this, we can simply solve the issue of naming the different walls. Everything is now set. And now we can simply self-size settings, resize everything once again, press OK. Fit everything into the window, which is just, okay, that's a little bit too little. Let's see if we can simplify this a little bit. Okay, maybe something as this, but let's see how the data behaves. So we got the reference line length. If I remember well, I definitely modeled everything in modulations of 3 meters. So we got something as 3, then we got something as 6, and 6, 3. So yeah, the reference line length is correct. Then we got component volume net. If you want to manually quantify this using 3D to measure out the cubic meters, go ahead, you can do so. Then you got rectangular component height. My guess is that this one, yeah, it's just going to give us the height of the wall. My guess is that, yeah, we have the hollow block, something like this, and rectangular component height will simply measure the height of this rectangle. So we can leave it, set it as simply as height. The width is correct because if you remember the intermediate skin, the hollow block, we set it to be 0.15. So this one are completely correct. Reference line is also correct. Now component cross section area. Yeah, my guess is that we also have the wall, something like this. And this component cross section area, my guess is that yeah, it's going to quantify pretty much this face. So maybe component cross section area, we can delete this because I'm not sure I'm going to include that. But we get the projected component area. My guess is that yeah, this one is going to quantify, if we visualize this in a section, we got the wall, which is something like this. We got the interior pilasters. So it's going to quantify this face over here. So we can also double check it. Don't forget that you can also quantify just one simple wall and make sure that if the parameter is correct just for one element, now you can be certain that the rest of the schedule is going to be correctly displayed. For this example, I'm not going to waste any time trying to double check it. I'm just going to leave it as it is for now. And then we have something interesting. We have a nice difference going on here because we notice the proportion over here, it's switching correctly. And if you notice, the projected component area is smaller than the surface area. So my guess is that if, let's for example maybe even select this 16.33, which is this one over here. So my guess is that if you notice over here, I'm just going to reposition this better. We got one face of the wall, which is a complete mass element, and then we got sectioned faces, which I'm going to mark in red, which are just the faces that the hollow block has. So my guess here is that one of the quantifications is taking into consideration the last finish or the last skin, which is going to give us more square meters. Okay, and the other parameter will just take into consideration the intermediate surface we got for the hollow block, which is going to be obviously less. Okay, so we go back to the quantification. You will notice that now this one I'm going to mark it in blue, which is the exterior skin, and this one would be the surface of the hollow block. As per usual, make sure to double check this. You can quantify this manually just for one element, but my guess is that it's correctly set. And then we got the surface area of the wall outside face net, but if you notice, this is quite pretty much the same, so you can leave out whichever parameter you want. I'm just going to take into consideration maybe surface area, see if it works perfectly. I'm just going to leave it, remove this. Then we got, for this schedule, take into consideration that we have extra values over here, which is going to give us the complete total for each of the columns. So let's modify this a little bit, maybe activate the icon of the sum for surface area, and pretty much for all the different measurements we can activate it, except for length of reference line, name, element ID. But the rest is going to be, well, except the height. I'm just going to deactivate it for the height, but the rest should be completely fine. Let's press OK. And now we can say that, yeah, it's looking quite decent. It's looking much better because we also got the totals over here. Okay, so the hard part for this example would be setting up the correct fields, making sure that everything works, and specifying the correct selection. This is just the most important consideration for this part. So what I'm going to do now is I'll just take a few minutes. I'll give this just a bit of format. If anything comes up, I'll make an explanation, a commentary about it. But in your case, also take a little bit of time and make sure that this has format. And yeah, pretty much it's done. So we get something like this. I just titled it the full wall length, the full wall height. Then we got the core width, just the core volume, the core area, and the exterior finish area. You can even customize this even more if you want to add maybe the surface area of the wall outside. Don't forget that you got two faces in ArchiCAD. You got inside and you got the outside. This one is also dependent on how you model your project, something we also commented in Basic BIM Framework, where I explained to you in detail to be careful how you model your project. But now you can even take into consideration the outside finish to quantify this, or the inside finish, or even so take into consideration both of them. So feel free to add this, to configure this however you want. The most important thing is that you understand the specification and the exclusive possibilities you get when working with the components schedule. To put it in short words, you will get this extra group with different specific parameters. Right, and having covered how you can quantify the core element of your wall, let's proceed now with the paint, or just the surface, or just the exposed surface. Okay, so in this case what we are going to do, I'm just going to open up the example real quick. Don't forget that in ArchiCAD, if you, for example, model, I'm just going to draw it real quick. If you model maybe your wall, you got your human scale, this is a section view, and then you maybe model something which is hiding part of the wall, then you will get the exposed area, which is this part over here, which maybe can contain some type of paint. And the best part is that ArchiCAD will also allow you to detect which area of the wall is exposed and which area of the wall is hidden. And this is something that we can do using the, well, this one in Spanish. Let's go back to the international version, using the surface type of schedule. As per usual, I'm going to select the three that come by default. You can even use it to check out the parameters you get when working with this type of schedule. If you notice, the one that we're going to use is the exposed area by criteria. But you can always check out the other examples. If you want to check it out, go ahead, you can keep it, but in my case, I'm going to delete this anyway, okay? And as per usual, let's right click it, new schedule. This one is going to be quantification number 4, and let's set it to be paint quantification or something like that. Press OK. Now let's start off with the selection. We are going to select, of course, all the walls because this is where the paint is assigned. And now we have to be careful when specifying the selection, because also we need to specify the surface, just the surface we want to take into consideration, because the wall has multiple types of surface. We don't want everything, we just want a specific selection. So in first place, we have small issue. If we set it to wall, it's going to take into consideration the foundation, because if I remember, we modeled the foundation also as a wall. So let's add a criteria by layer. Right over here, just search for the layer, double click it, and let's specify that the layer is going to be the walls and parapet, which is this one over here, walls and parapet. And let's add the second criteria, which is going to be the surface we want to work with. I'm just going to search for surface in surface and materials. Okay, we get surface and surface name. Let's check out how both of these work. So we got the surface, which is actually, if I'm not mistaken, both of these work quite similar. In one you can simply specify the surface, and in another you have to input the name. So you can use whichever option you want to go with. Just going to go with the one which is a selection. So how about we maybe quantify the, well, you can quantify pretty much anything. I'm just going to go with the paint, titanium white, which is the one we actually assigned for the walls, if I'm not mistaken. So the selection is looking good. Now let's jump into the fields. If I remember well, the fields, we just have the ID, we have the amount of how many faces the component has, or how many faces this specific wall has. So in this wall we are quantifying two different faces which have this surface and have this exposed area. So let's go ahead with the, well, the ID for material, no, but the element ID. Let's go with the quantity over here. Let's take the, okay, now be careful, because in the same manner as we already did in the previous lesson with the components, you are going to get this specific group of parameters, okay? And right over here, you can extract the surface color in RGB code, maybe in swatch code, whether it's going to differ from building material. If it's different, it's going to tell yes or no. You can extract the surface name and the vectorial hatching name, or the 2D representation. And of course, the one we actually seek for is the exposed area, which is quite amazing. So let's take into consideration the exposed area, and I'm pretty sure I'm missing one, which is the surface name. Let's finally add the surface name, this one over here. So now we got the exposed area, which is going to give us also the total. Make sure to activate right over here the icon for the sum, and the surface name, quantity, and element ID. Well, it's looking quite decent. So let's press OK, let's check it out, see how it behaves. And okay, in first place, let's merge everything all together. So yeah, it's going to give us these extra faces, which I remember are actually the parapet walls, something we haven't specified the ID. So how about we quickly go into the finished model, deactivate the cutting plane, simply take the first wall. Let's specify this to be the parapet wall, maybe 1. Just going to take a minute, set the ID for all the different elements, and 6. So now we should have this much easier to be identified. Let's go to paint quantification, and there we have it. So we got the parapet wall quantification over here, how many faces, then we got the walls over here, how many faces, and we got the exposed area for the faces we got for the walls. So in this manner we can say that pretty much it's set, all the different parameters are working, and we get a total of the exposed area, which we can now use to specify how much paint we have to buy. So as per usual, I'm going to take just a minute, just going to give it a little bit of format. And now we can say that it's pretty much done. So as you can see, it also has some exclusive parameters, especially in the surface group over here, but you can mess around with the different possibilities. The best thing about the surface schedule is, of course, the exposed area by criteria, okay, and the ability to select a specific surface to work with. So as usual, take as much time as you need. Make sure that you finish up and solve the surface schedule. And in the next example, we can now proceed with the last schedules, which are going to be graphic, where we are going to create a schedule for the doors, one for the windows, and finally, but not least, one for the furnish. Alright, so for doors and windows, I'm pretty sure we already covered the basic examples, so there shouldn't be any type of issue because we already explained this. Just going to recapitulate real quick on which fields and parameters to input. First things first, let's create a new schedule. This one is going to be by elements, okay? Let's set this to be quantification 5. Well, it's not going to be quantification 5, but actually a table. Just set it whichever ID you want to use. Doors schedule. Okay, I was having trouble there. So let's name this door schedule. It's going to be, let's select the door we got over here. You can even try to add doors and windows all together, which is completely possible if you combine the criterias. If you don't want to maybe create two individual schedules, you can add the element type once again, and you can set this to be doors or windows. In this manner, you can combine two different schedules in one schedule, but there's a possibility that some of the parameters are not going to be shared, because maybe you want to extract for the windows, maybe the seal height, and the doors will not have that possibility. Just be careful, because if you mix this up, maybe some parameters won't be related. So for this case, I'm going to work this individually. Let's take all the doors for the project. And for the fields, as per usual, first things first, element ID, which is the golden rule for my case. Let's take the quantity. Something quite amazing that I totally love from doors and windows in the field is that you can take just this one over here, nominal sizes for all the different measurements. So let's take, for example, this one. Another quite amazing parameter is orientation, because it's going to tell you whether it's going to open to the left or the right, in which side it's going to be opened up. You got different parameters you can continue checking out. You got these 4 parameters are the visualization, and the one we are going to use is view from open inside. This is the one that is going to give us the visualization for the whole door in the elevation view. So make sure to definitely add the view from open inside, or you can go ahead and view it maybe from the other side. So I leave this decision up to you. Well, you can add as many parameters as you want. Just going to set it now as this. What else do we have? So we got the ID, the amount, the dimensions, 2D view, and the elevation. So let's go back to ArchiCAD. We got the ID, the amount, the dimensions. How about we add a small extra, which is also the orientation, quite useful. Then we got the size. We got the elevation, and we are still missing the visualization in ground floor, which you can find in general parameters. And right over here, the 2D plan preview. Let's check this one out. You can even add, for example, 3D axonometry, which is quite amazing. I'm just going to add it so you can check it out real quick, but I'm just going to delete it anyway. So let's press OK. Let's see how it visualizes in the schedule. Let's open up this schedule. Let's see what's happening over here. And right over here, well, before we jump into anything, I'm just going to scale and resize the columns and the rows. Press OK. And now you can see the different parameters. So as I was telling you, as you can see in the orientation, it's going to specify it with the legend R or the legend L, whether it's going to open to the right or to the left. This is quite useful. For the dimensions, you're going to get the whole dimensions for the door. And for the 3D axonometry, it's just a 3D perspective, which I just included just to show you what's going to happen. But once again, I'm just going to delete this. Actually, this one is something we're going to use for the furniture. This is where it's going to take place, okay? But pretty much for the doors, the schedule now is configured, and now it's just a matter of taking some time. Don't forget that you can select your door, you can play around with the preview parameters, you can add automatic dimensions, set how you want to, where you want to position these dimensions. Once again, override the pen. If you don't want it to be orange, you can set it to whichever pen you want to use. This is something I'm going to take a minute for, and I'm going to make sure that this has format. Now I just want to point out something important for doors and windows. If you notice, this is a small detail that not many ArchiCAD users know, but you can see over here that we get this extra line which is specifying also the opening in the elevation view. If you go to your schedules, well, this one, no, it's not about going to the model, but first off, you need to save the schedule. So let's save it with the correct model view option. This is where you will also define whether you want to maintain this small line which specifies the opening, or if you want to delete it. And don't forget that when we checked out the model view options, we had something, this one, carpentry, where we set the full detail for doors and windows, and we also activated the openings. If you go into model view option and later on deactivate the parameters which have the reveal or the opening line for the doors and windows, it's also going to affect your schedule. So this is just a small thing to keep in mind when working with your door and window schedules. Okay, and something else to keep in mind is that once I finish the doors, we also need to annotate the window schedule and add which glass is going to be fixed and which glass is going to be sliding, and pretty much all the detail that you want to add. Alright, and once you are done with the door schedule, something to keep in mind is that I just decided to switch a little bit the dimension position just to the left side, because if you set it to above and left, what's going to happen is that it's going to duplicate the dimension over here and it's going to look weird. But if you just set it to maybe the left one, it's just going to look a little bit better, because you already got the dimension over here, which is referencing the width and the width in the elevation and the 2D plan. Now, a small tip to just finish up the window schedule just a tiny bit, a little bit faster, would be once you have your schedule ready, you can go over here to scheme settings and you can use these options. You can take the door schedule, export it as a separate file, and once again import it back as a duplicate. This would be one of the options, or the second option would be to select your door schedule and simply press the new button, and instead of starting from scratch, you can simply duplicate the door schedule and name this as window schedule. So if you want to save this for future uses, for your future projects, go ahead and export it and save it on a separate folder, and then in the future you can import it and that's it. Or if you want to do it right now internally, it's much easier if you simply duplicate the door schedule. So for this case, I'm going to duplicate door schedule, name it window schedule, press OK. And instead of doors, this one is going to be the window. I'm pretty sure, I want to guess that it's going to be pretty much done once I hit OK. And yeah, you can see right over here, it's just a matter of duplicating the schedules, and now you got the windows. Let's make sure that everything is merged up. So we got something weird going on here, because pretty sure that I changed the dimensions for one of the windows in my model. This small detail, this is the one I was telling you about. If you got some small detail that is going to be completely switched up, ArchiCAD is going to separate your elements. So for this case, we might as well go ahead and simply rename the ID for the window. I'm just going to take a moment. Maybe this one is going to be window number 1. Both of these are going to be window 2. And then maybe this one is going to be window number 3. If it changes, well, that's the best thing that we can do. Specify that it's a completely different type of window. Let's go back to the schedule. So yeah, it's looking much better. We got 2 windows too, one over here. Everything is dimensioned. We just need to scale this down or resize the columns and rows. Let's press OK. And yeah, pretty much everything is set. So what I'm going to do now is I'll select the first window, annotate, and I'll take the text tool I got over here. Activate text tool. You can even use the label, as always, as it's completely independent. I'm just going to go ahead with simple text. Just input some type of basic text over here, specify that it's going to be fixed. As you can see, we already got the arrow over here, which is thanks to the model view options. Don't forget these options over here. This is where you can control how you want to visualize also your window. Pretty much we're done. This is just the small detail. Let's press OK. And let's do the same for the other two windows. And with this, we are pretty much done with the schedule. Don't forget to save the schedules in your view map. Simply hit the save button and go ahead and save it. And now we can say that we got the doors and the windows. So as you can see, it's much easier once you are done with one of the schedules. Make sure to simply duplicate it. There's no need to start all over again because the doors and windows are pretty much shared with the parameters. Or you can go ahead and apply what I already commented you once. Maybe includes the windows or doors so everything fits in the same spot. But I leave this decision up to you. For this case, make sure to finish up setting up your doors and windows. And for the last lesson, we are just going to comment how you can solve the furniture. So lastly but not least, let's go ahead and solve the furniture, which is quite easy and quite sure that we already commented pretty much everything about this. You got pretty much the same parameters that we already used many times. You got the 2D plan, which is exactly the same as for doors and windows. And you got the 3D axonometry view, which you can already include. So let's go ahead to ArchiCAD. Let's create a new schedule, which is going to be by elements. New schedule. Let's start. For this one, I'm going to start from scratch. Let's make it furniture schedule or catalog, however you want to name it. Press OK. The element type is going to be an object. Now be careful because if you just set it to object, it's going to consider the ceiling. And that's something you don't want to happen for this schedule. Let's add the layer criteria and let's specify that all the objects which are set to be in the furniture layer. Okay, and then let's go ahead, ID element, or here element ID, the quantity. We can simply go ahead and pretty much extract all the parameters from general parameters. This is where we are going to find everything. We got the height, we got the width. We got also the 3D length, if I remember well. We got 3D axonometry, 3D plan preview, and we still need the length, which I'm just going to go over here, type in length, and you got object lamp parameters, which is length over here. Okay, you can even try to search for different parameters you have available for the object. So you got the 3D front axonometry, which pretty much is an elevation view. We can add this just to check out how it works, but pretty much that's it. We can also add the parameter which is the library part name. This one is going to give you the title for the object, and with this you can identify which is which object. Okay, so let's press OK. Let's see how this schedule is going to behave. Let's open this up and let's see how it behaves. So pretty much we got a total mess that we need to adjust. Be careful because this schedule is going to be a little bit laggy, and this is due to us adding up the 3D view. Don't forget that if an object has just way too many polygons, it's going to extract all the polygons and it might get a little bit messy. So let's simply scale this down and resize columns and rows as per usual. And as you can see, yeah, pretty much everything is set. But I feel that I still prefer a little bit this one than the general one. You can use this however you want to use it. This one is completely isometric and this one feels a little bit rotated. So just keep in mind that one was a general 3D axonometry and the other one is specific to the object, which is 3D front axonometry, which I believe that this one is a little bit better. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep it and simply delete the 3D axonometry. Now let's take a moment to check out the order for this schedule. So it's going to start with the ID, it's going to give us a name, the quantity. Don't forget to merge your items, so it's simplified. Then it's going to give us the measurements and then the visualization. We just need to give it a little bit of format and make sure that the length is going to stay a little bit behind. Maybe height in the end, so we got width by length and then height. and something like this, okay? So pretty much we're set with the data. Let's take a minute and let's finally give a little bit of format to these elements. And pretty much it's set. So you can configure this however you want. Feel free to do so. It's going to delete maybe these lines, and yeah, pretty much everything is set. And don't forget that you can even go ahead, take this object, add some dimensions, maybe to the left, and above and left should look quite nice. Let's add this up, and now we got even a small 2D plan view, which is quite amazing. Go ahead, resize everything, and now you got a completely fully customized type of schedule. So with this, we can now say that we are pretty much done with the different schedules. As always, take as much time as you need. Hopefully with this, now you have a clear idea of how you can quantify pretty much anything which is modeled within ArchiCAD, extract quantities, extract geometrical information, extract parametric information. There are just way too many parameters that you can work with, extract, and represent in a 2D format. So as per usual, practice this as many times as you need, and now we can put an end to this section. And with this, I hope you have a clear understanding of how to fully utilize the schedules function to generate baseline quantities for any part of your project. As you have seen, the ability to quantify everything within seconds is a tremendous advantage, and even more so, the capability to integrate Excel for seamless data exchange with ArchiCAD. For the next module, we will set aside the project we have been working on throughout the course and begin reviewing the structural and construction concepts through a new experimental project. Make sure to take a short break before moving on to the next session, and with that said, I'll see you for the next module.